Hello and welcome to the show. On the program tonight, we'll hear from local representatives from the Canadian Professional Chuck Wagon Association. Their tarp auction takes place next week, and marketing manager Brian Hebson and outrider Dustin Gorst stopped by to give us a preview of their upcoming season. But first, Danielle Smith's Wild Rose Alliance Party is doing well in the provincial polls. If there was an election held in Alberta tomorrow, she'd have a good chance of becoming the new premier. We'll speak to her about how she'd do things differently right now on Around the Region. Later in the show, the Kiwanis Club of Lloydminster has a fun fundraiser every year around April Fool's Day. We'll see how some Midwest residents had to pay the fine or do the time. Joining me in the studio right now is Danielle Smith, leader of the Wild Rose Alliance Party. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So let's talk real briefly about your foray into politics. You've had a fairly meteoric rise from a Calgary School Board trustee in 1998, I think, to now you're the leader of what could be the next provincial leading party.
Yeah.
So just tell me about why you first got into politics, and do you have the same reasons for being in it now as you did when you first got in?
Well, I got into the political world first on campus at the University of Calgary. I joined the campus club for the PCs in 92, 93, and it was an exciting year. It was a year that we had a provincial election and a federal election, a provincial leadership race, a federal leadership race, the Charlottetown Accord. So I was hooked. My first try at politics, as you mentioned, came with a run at the school board in 1998. But then the rest of my career I spent in the media, I spent in advocacy for property rights. The last couple of years before I decided to run for the leadership of this party, I was a lobbyist for a small business group called the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. But my whole adult career has been spent looking at the role of government in our lives, looking at the role of regulation and the impact it has on individuals and families, communities and businesses. And I thought that the next logical step was to take a jump into the provincial political scene. Part of the reason why I left the PCs, and I think part of the reason why a lot of people have left the PCs and are considering doing that is I think people have seen over the last 5 or 6 years that they're going in the wrong direction, that we've seen massive budget deficits, the biggest in our province's history. We have a series of bills that have impacted and eroded landowner and leaseholder rights. Our healthcare system is on the brink of catastrophic collapse, and I think people are seeing that we need new people and new ideas to come in with a new party so that we can take a different direction and solve some of these problems.
Well, and certainly the numbers would possibly reflect that. I mean, certainly your party has risen in the polls, consistently through the years, and now you're actually ahead of the PC. So with our election call tomorrow, then the polls are saying that you would definitely win. So what do you think that you're doing right, I guess, to get your message out, and why are people responding to it so positively?
I've been delighted to see that we've been first or second in a lot of polls over the last year and a half, and I think part of it is that we do politics differently. When I began, I looked at the path that Peter Lougheed took when he was building his PC party, and there was some good advice there. There were 3 things that he started out to do. He established his party structure by hiring a young guy named Joe Clark who went around and set up all the constituency associations. He made sure he had a good team of people running with him, which is why we started onto our candidate selection process very early. We have a local candidate here named Danny Hozak who's been working very hard building support for us in Lloydminster, Vermilion and the surrounding area. And also, I think the other thing that Lougheed suggested and that we're doing is you can't just complain about what the other guys are doing wrong. You also have to put forward your own positive ideas for change on what you'll do right. And that's why we do things like rolling out our balanced budget alternative. We rolled out our competitiveness review strategy when we were going through the royalty challenges. We have 9 policy areas that we have rolled out. We've got another 7 to go. And I think people are seeing that we're serious about forming government. We're not in this to get second place. We're not in this to win just a couple of seats in the next election. We're in this to replace this government.
Absolutely. I mean, that much is clear, definitely. I was actually going to ask you about the budget. That was going to be my next question. I mean, as you say, you guys have put out an alternative budget. Can you maybe just briefly highlight what was wrong with this budget and how yours would fix those issues?
Well, we called our balanced budget alternative a solution for a spending-addicted government. We have a 3-step recovery program, and that's the thing that I think a lot of Albertans have not been made aware of. It seems like the way it's being presented is that we have to choose between massive deficits or massive cuts, and it doesn't have to be that way. Our solution is one where you just start putting in some discipline. You restrain your increases in spending across the range of government areas, and you'll be able to get yourself out of this problem in very quick order. So one of the things we looked at is having a spending limit rule where we would limit year-over-year spending increases to inflation plus population growth. We would stretch out the capital plan rather than trying to cram $20 billion worth of spending into 3 years. Just stretch that out over 4 years or over 5 years. You can get all of your priorities built, but you can do it in a time frame that's reasonable and isn't causing you to run deficits. The third major area is looking at ending wasteful spending. Areas like corporate welfare, the carbon capture and storage fund, the venture capital fund. There are areas where government is directly subsidizing some of the biggest businesses that we have in Alberta. We think that the business community needs a good environment to invest, but they don't need corporate handouts from government. If we can get away from those kinds of things, we'll literally save hundreds of millions of dollars, get us back into the black faster, and get us onto a track that's sustainable. So our alternative budget is one that we've done 2 years in a row now. Very, very simple solutions. Unfortunately, the PCs have not looked at that seriously and not even taken the first steps towards getting us back into a situation where we're on the road to surpluses again.
Well, possibly that'll change after the next election. We'll have more with Wild Rose Alliance leader Danielle Smith on the other side of this break.